Brought Manuel on to talk about a very specific topic. We're gonna talk about Jose Mourinho, because as we know, Jose is not really a guy to stick around with. He lasts a couple of seasons, normally usually wins something very early on.
Yep.
But he's now 18 months into his Manchester United career. Now this is usually the time it starts to go downhill slightly, doesn't it? Manuel, let's get your thoughts in. Straight off the bat, what do you reckon about Mourinho at the moment? How do you see his career panning out with United? What's he done so far, and what can we expect to see soon?
I think he would actually be all right if he hadn't thrown as much abuse at the likes of Pep Guardiola over the last few years. Basically saying that what Pep Guardiola did in Spain and in Germany was a fluke, and that he couldn't do it in a big league. And if he hadn't said all of that, I think he would actually be all right, because he's second in the league right now, and
but second's not really good enough for Mourinho, is it?
Of course not, because Pep Guardiola is in that league now, and he's 11 points now, right? Suspiciously looks like the Bundesliga these days, the Premier League, and that's not good for Jose Mourinho, because it makes him look very ordinary.
So do you think Jose Mourinho this season is going to have to just put all of his eggs into that Champions League basket? Because he's not the sort of bloke who's going to just think, oh, okay, well, second was all right, and this season we go again. He's going to want, if Pep's got something on his mantelpiece, Jose's going to want something on his mantelpiece, right? Is he going to go for the Champions League, do you think, or is he just going to play it safe?
Oh, he will have to, but I don't think he has the team to do it. I don't think the Manchester United... I mean, we sat on the couch just a few days ago and we discussed Manchester United, and I don't think the Manchester United have the team to win the Champions League.
But I would probably argue, man, well, he's never had the team to do it, the times he's done it. That Inter Milan team was nowhere near the best team in Europe that season. That Porto team came out of nowhere. They probably weren't even ranked in the top 15 of the favourites that season, and they came out of nowhere and won it. He's good as an underdog, and he doesn't always get the chance to be that.
Yeah, that's the thing I think is probably worth saying as well, that he's probably suffering a little bit under the expectations that he's built up for himself.
I do agree with you on Porto, but you have to remember with Inter Milan, they spent €1 billion to get there. That's not an underdog. So
are you rolling them out? I know that Manuel was on the show. We did the Champions League draw in the week, and Manchester United have got Sevilla. And Manuel was the only one on the couch. There's three of us that day that said that he actually thinks Man United might get knocked out by Sevilla.
I think there's a chance. I don't think it's hands down going to happen, but I think there's a chance, because Sevilla are a very plucky side, and that's the real test. I could see things be getting really difficult for Mourinho if he doesn't go through there.
Yeah, Sevilla are the kind of squad that can scalp teams unexpectedly, and I think for anybody to take on them with any level of complacency is obviously a very dangerous thing. Going back to Mourinho at United, though, because he's obviously known as somebody who can't really last. He's a two-season bloke at every station.
Yeah.
Then obviously most of those times, the first season, the second season are fairly successful, and then it begins to fall apart fairly steadily. Given that he hasn't had that level of success at Man United that he's had at the other places that he's been, do you think he can establish himself there for a longer time, and there's going to be a Mourinho era at United? Or do you think it's also going to be the case that, we saw with this thing, this debacle in the tunnel the other day against Man City.
How good was that, by the way?
Yeah, quality, but it looks like Mourinho losing his rag. Yeah, right? So do you think this is what's happening early on? And do you think he's going to, how long do you see him staying around at United?
Well, I think he's definitely not going to go anywhere until he wins the league. I don't see him messing up enough to get fired. I don't think they're going to start ending outside of the top four. Mourinho's too savvy a manager for that to start happening. But they are going to have to fire him if he's just not winning a league again and again and again, because he's not good enough to be second best, and especially not good enough to be second best to Manchester City. That's the worst thing in the world. But he will win a league title before he leaves there on his own terms. There's no way. Because he would never say, look, I tried 3 years in. So he's going to have to do something differently, because he's already won the league at this point.
At some point, though, that,
at other clubs,
people will call time on him. Manuel, what do you reckon?
I don't think with Pep Guardiola being there is much of a chance of him winning the league. We've seen what Pep did in Germany. Now we're seeing the same thing happening in England. I can see, as long as Pep Guardiola could win 3 or 4 titles in a row in England.
Well, Hasha HSA has just said on the chat that Mourinho is going to be the next PSG manager. Now that's been floated around quite a lot. Do you think Do you think they could tempt him away before he wins a league title at Man United? Because I honestly, Manuel, I don't see him leaving until he's beat Pep.
You think Man United is going to give him 4 or 5 years? Because I think Pep Guardiola is going to stick around. He's going to dominate the league as long as he's there, and then he's going to go and take a different job. And I don't think United are going to be that patient. And that PSG rumor is a strong one. You see that floating around a lot, and I could see them enticing him, especially Mino Raiola, his agent, or Mendes' agent, Mino Raiola, all these people that are involved. I can see there is something to it, where there's smoke, there's fire. So I definitely think that is something where I say, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And Unai Emery, you see what happened in Munich at the halftime, during halftime, and Unai Emery that stayed in the dressing room, apparently because he got a chat from the ownership. So Unai Emery is on shaky ground there, and I could see Jose Mourinho, if things don't go well at Manchester, that's going to be his next move.
Possibly this heavily milk-based food fight that we saw last weekend, which I've already said on this couch previously, I'm a massive fan of, because it harks back to that like classic Premier League era. When you had the famous pizza fight. Someone lobbed a slice of pizza at Fergie, which is
who was it?
I think it was Fabregas.
Yeah, it was Fabregas.
Fabregas launched a pizza at Fergie's. I mean, but okay, the sort of jokes aside, if we talk about football, that was a period everyone sort of associates with like these. Such a tight, angry battle, people cared so much, and these teams had a real identity.
With Mourinho and Pep, I don't think it's quite like that, because Mourinho, I think, would very much like it to be like that, but Pep is just such a cool bloke.
It must wind him up.
You can't raise Pep's blood pressure.
It's like when when you're younger and you're trying to wind your sibling up,
and
you just get yourself so angry and worked up, and they just sit there grinning at you, and the more they grin at you and just sit there just doing nothing, the angrier you get. And just the way that Pep's just striding around in his chinos, just winning games, saying the right things and doing the right things, and his team are playing the right way. Yeah. I mean, it must be so annoying for him just to look at Pep Guardiola doing these things. This used to be his place, what I mean? England. What do you reckon, Manuel? Do you reckon he's just going to explode in a fit of rage because of Pep?
In private they actually get along. Jose Mourinho and Pep Guardiola. It's what you see on the field. Show, it's show.
No, I'm not having that. It's like when Ronaldo and Messi say they're mates. No, they're not mates. I'm not having it.
I think their relationship isn't as bad as it's made out of either. They just don't have anything in common. But
I think that's the case.
Pep Guardiola, Jose Mourinho, what you see on the field, it's kind of like World Wrestling. A lot of it is it's not staged, but it's supposed to fire up the players. There's reasons behind it, but I think what you see on the field doesn't necessarily get carried on beyond, well, except with Milkgate this weekend, beyond the field. So, Jose Mourinho is good at creating these scenarios and getting teams rallied behind him. But of course, this is also the kind of thing that wears off really quickly, right?
Yeah, exactly. And if you're constantly creating this kind of a thing, you open yourself to the accusation that all you're trying to do is distract from the professional aspect, and if it doesn't come off for you, if you don't get the results that you wanted, and because Pep is so cool and so calm, you could be building yourself or digging your own grave, basically. We've been talking quite a bit about Sanchez as well, Manuel, saying that we think his time at Arsenal is very, very close to its end. How do you see that, and where do you think he might land if he leaves?
I was sure that he was going to go to Bayern in the summer.
Okay.
Then Bayern decided that, there was real interest there, but Bayern didn't like, I think, the package altogether with transfer sum and salary and everything together was 180 million euros. And I don't mean that this is for everything, right? The whole package over 5 years. And Bayern didn't feel like he was worth it because he was too old.
Yeah, but do you think maybe Bayern, because they went down the James Rodriguez route? I mean, I know that Bayern are certainly a wealthy club, but they don't really have the same financial power as some of these massive sort of like oil-backed Premier League clubs. Could they really have got two megastars in like that? Because they're not quite, they're not quite.
Well, Rodriguez was pretty much Ancelotti's was pretty much a solo move by Ancelotti, wasn't it? If I'm not mistaken, which is also fairly rare for Bayern, because you normally have Rummenigge and Hoeneß breathing down the neck of anybody who's looking at a piece of paper on a table. They usually like to get quite deeply involved themselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, James Rodriguez, but I think James Rodriguez was a steal. Jupp Heynckes made him work out really well, but he ended up being a steal. Bayern have money; they have a lot of money, but it's their own money. They don't have someone give it to them. They have to generate. So they have to be really careful on how they spend it. And I think that they have no problem spending the kind of money for a player like Alexis Sanchez. But if they see one reason why it could not work out, they would right away shy away. Because they say, like, if we sink this money, that's our money gone. It's not the money gone by a wealthy oligarch or a state like Qatar. It's our money. I think that makes you operate very differently, right? So it's not a matter of them not being able to spend it. It's a matter of they wanted to spend it. So that was why they shied away.
Well, I've got to say, I think Bayern are one of the only teams that we've sort of mentioned there that could really actually do with him.
With Sanchez?
I'm not just talking about, everyone could use a player like Sanchez. He's absolutely brilliant. But I'm saying they'd have a real use for him. Because, you talk to a lot of Bayern fans these days, they don't really know what they'd do if Lewandowski got a serious injury. Okay, Thomas Muller's a pretty good striker, but he's not actually a striker.
Yeah, he's not
actually a striker.
Well, aren't they about to sign Sandro Wagner?
Yeah, I mean, that sort of shows you, doesn't it? I mean, Sandro Wagner's a capable Bundesliga player. Yeah, but if Lewandowski's out and you're playing, who knows, Barcelona, Real Madrid in a Champions League semi-final, and you've got Sandro Wagner up front, I mean, okay, I think Lewandowski would still play if Sanchez moved to Bayern, but he could play off the wing. But if Lewandowski got injured, bam, Sanchez. You'd have a world-class striker. He can do it both. He can do it off the wing. He can do it in the middle. It would be a really good idea for Bayern to sign someone like that, rather than trying to sort of hedge their bets and get someone capable like Sandro Wagner. Yep. It makes sense, right, Manuel? That move makes sense more than the others.
It does make sense, but again, it's a financial question. I think a lot of Bayern fans, everything you said makes sense and is right. And that's why I thought, well, they should do it. They should go and get Sanchez, get him. But, Uli Hoeneß wants a cheaper option, so Sandro Wagner it is.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so some of the guys are asking a little bit about some of the other Champions League clubs involved. So what do we reckon? I mean, we've asked here, what do we reckon Chelsea's chances are of going through the Champions League? They've got Barcelona, obviously. We've seen a couple of absolute brilliant clashes between those two in the last sort of 10 years of Champions League football. Ever since Chelsea sort of came to money a little while back, they've always seemed to be facing Barcelona.
Remember that one game when Drogba was just losing it on the sideline after the game? Oh, mate, I felt so bad for him. And
they did that amazing game where Torres sort of just justified his £50 million fee in that one game. Gary Neville went, yeah, for about a minute long. Absolutely unbelievable. And he's just slotted it home, and it was an amazing moment. So,
Manuel, that's an English commentating classic, mate. If you haven't seen it, you definitely have to watch Gary Neville commentating Fernando Torres' goal. It's unbelievable. It's so fun.
We also saw we've seen brilliant moments like Ronaldinho scoring that absolute belter where he just did that no back lift and just smashed into
without
the
even
corner.
He didn't even take a step, mate.
It was
a
miracle. There was that other brilliant game between Chelsea and Barcelona where it looked like Chelsea had just been absolutely screwed over by the referee and all the officials, and every decision went against them that night. It was a lot of fun for me personally, but not for you Chelsea fans. So what do we reckon? Is there another classic line in store for us, Manuel? And what do we reckon the score is going to be in that one?
I have Barcelona goes through in that one, but it is going to be a big clash. We have a few big clashes like that in this round. Just very excited. This is one of the big ones. I remember Michael Ballack, of course, just absolutely berating the referee after the 2009, I believe. That's Chelsea. Barcelona produces so many memorable moments. Yeah. I'd be absolutely shocked if this one won't, but I do think that Barcelona are going to go through. I think there's a lot of issues with this Chelsea side right now, and then of course it's coming off the back of a really tough winter Christmas schedule for Chelsea as well, which is going to probably aid Barcelona quite a bit.
How about PSG and Real?
Well, I think Real is going to go through. I'm with the old boys there. Not the new money. I'm with the old money.
Okay. Pay me to say it, but I'm not going to agree with you on that one. I do think that PSG are going to be able to slide their way through.
What do we reckon about? Well, I mean, we're having a little look at about Paul Pogba and co here. Manchester United, Sevilla. We've obviously discussed him. They're not in for Sanchez, but they are potentially in for another Arsenal player. Now, there's been a lot of talk about Mesut Ozil's future. Essentially, he came to Arsenal and it's not worked out for him quite the way he wanted. It's an absolute mirror image story of the Sanchez deal, which led us earlier to say, why do these players keep going there if they're going to only end up disappointed? It's true. If you're a world-class talent, it seems an odd place to go. Manuel, what do we reckon about Ozil? Do you reckon there's any chance of a Bundesliga return, or is he destined for... There's been talks of Barcelona. PSG are bound to be throwing their hat into the ring at some stage, just because they're linked with everybody. Or Manchester United, which does seem like the most likely destination at the moment. Even if it was just because Mourinho could just take something that was Wenger's.
Yeah, and Jose Mourinho and Ozil are very tight. Yep. Right? They have Mourinho manages to have special relationships with some players. Ibrahimovic comes to mind, right? And Mesut Ozil is in that same category. Mesut Ozil absolutely loved working with Jose Mourinho, and I think that is already a very big factor in this. And for me personally, I think Manchester United are favourites than Mesut Ozil.
Well, you heard it here first, guys. Thank you very much again, Manuel. Absolute legend.